Yep, and we're live. And the giveaway is live as well. The giveaway is live as well. So for the people who are here, you can go ahead and type hashtag free.
Hello and good morning, everybody. This is Anne. Welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, and disembodied voice Justin. And Kiri, you were squeaking your ball a second ago, and then you stopped. Kiri! And it was squeaky Kiri, but no squeaks. It's not a squeaky Friday. I'm sorry, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Sorry for starting just a tad late. We're a little discombobulated this morning. It is what it is, right? Hey, Calasandra, thank you for the resub. Swoo! 4-month streak. Fantastic. Fantastic. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Yes, thank you, everybody. Do your hashtag free for sure. We're giving away. Did you tell them what we're giving away, Justin?
I did not. I was leaving that up to you.
Oh, okay. And we decided on both the figure and the terrain, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So today, for your hashtag free, we are giving away a Dagon. Because I was feeling a little crafty on. And his altar, his cool Dagon altar. So we're giving away 3 lots of that. So we'll do one after I answer a couple questions, then we'll do one in the middle of the show, and then we'll do one at the end of the show. So it's Dagon and Dagon's altar, which should give you guys a cool, like, water creature encounter for your game. I have always liked Kevin's sculpt on that, so I thought that, yes, exactly. And also it's one that I think a lot of people really liked, but maybe didn't pick up right away, and so I thought that would be a good choice for today. So, yes. Oh, come on, Inara. Ditched work just for this. Awesome, Bean Mitch. Fantastic. That's what we love to hear. Fantastic. All right, good. We've got 48, at least 50 people in chat. Fantastic. Well, good, guys. I'm glad you're all here. Let's jump in and get into this whole thing. My screen is always fun to figure out when I'm trying to toggle between chat and questions and stuff. Let's see here. I did figure out yesterday how far back I had to go, Justin, and it was all the way to August 14th.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay. So, and there's also some lovely questions here. And I think I might have answered one of these, but we'll start with Tistors, which was August 12th, I think. So, and if this is repeat apologies, but I figure there's probably some new people here. So Tister says, I've heard advice to seal an area if you're happy and need to go over it. Do you think this works? And if it does, how do you clean up after a mistake? Essentially, how does this actually help given that the paint underneath is dried anyway? All right, so Tister, what you're doing, and this is actually a trick that is a holdover from the days when we were all painting with Vallejo, and I think Jennifer Haley may have actually started this entire thing. But what we used to do, because Vallejo is a more fragile paint, and it doesn't have the durability of Master Series, so it's softer. So if you put down a layer of, say, Tester's Dull Coat or another sealer, a spray sealer, then if you paint it on, if you were going to do freehand or something, or design over your area that you were happy with, you would paint it on in thinned paint, and then if you made a mistake, you could just use water to scrub it off. That's how the paint just didn't really adhere very well. Now, this doesn't work quite as well with Master Series, although it will still work. But Master Series has a higher adhesion, it sticks a lot better, and its resins are harder. They're not as soft. So that means that this trick does not work as well with Master Series. You have to be very fast. A lot of people see on my stream in the mornings, if I make a blorf, if I make a mistake, I'll right away rinse out my brush and throw some water and use a damp brush to just scrub away the paint I've just done. You have a few seconds before your paint really sets on the model where you can do that scrub away, and that does not require a sealer underneath. What you're essentially doing is taking advantage of the fact that the paint on top takes a few seconds to cure and set. So then you have to be fast, but you can do it without a sealer. I haven't tested it on a sealer base because honestly, I don't use sealer since I started using Master Series. I don't find it's necessary, like it was when I was working with Vallejo. But you could try this and see if it buys you a few seconds of extra time. I don't know that it necessarily will. So, but that's where that comes from. And almost every other paint on the market, guys, when you have a paint that's really high coverage and kind of goopy out of the bottle, you're dealing with that softer paint. What you're sacrificing in durability, you get back in coverage. Then what you get in coverage, you're sacrificing in durability. And it's just the way that paint resins work. So any of those softer paints, you would probably get better mileage doing this trick with. Not as much mileage with Master Series. Let's see here. See if there's any like thingy. Who's it? Looks like no further like commentary on that. All right, awesome. We will keep going. Let's see here. Any suggestions in order to teach techniques to somebody new to the hobby? Yes, absolutely. So Masara, what you need to do is break it down into levels and make sure the progression is less frustrating like this, because this is key. And I talk about this a lot on stream too, is that what we're trying to do is take away frustration, because if somebody can just enjoy painting without feeling like they're failing, they're going to probably get hooked on this hobby, right? Because this hobby's fantastic. It's relaxing. It gets you in your zone. You're being creative. And, you know, it's all that fun stuff that we love to do. So what I would do is really break it down into techniques and go kind of in order. And what I find is the good order is first examine base coats and then examine washes, just for paint consistency's sake. And then you want to make sure to set them up, you know, with those basics. So at least they understand that thinned paint has an application, right? And maybe with a thinner base coat, they might get more mileage. Although if they're on bones, you want it thick, you know. From there, I would actually go to lining. And there's a reason for this. It's because lining is kind of like, it's your first step toward targeted shading, right? With a wash, you're just putting the wash over the whole area, and it's going to dirty up a lot of areas. There's going to be some cleanup involved in getting it to look neat again after the wash. But with lining, if they're like looking at the wash, they're like, well, that kind of looks dirty and it's work to clean up, then you can go, well, then we can just line. And lining is the kind of the thing that gets your brush control better at a very fast rate. So I would do base coat, wash, lining before I started working on highlighting. And then when you start highlighting and you start trying to hit some of those smaller areas, you've already kind of exercised your brush control with the lining. Honestly, if you just paint a model in base block colors and line around everything and make sure that you're using a variety of darks and lights, your model will look fantastic anyway. So then when you add highlights, it looks even better. And that's kind of the order. Those are like basic foundational things. And you can teach dry brushing if you want, but usually textured surfaces give the most success with that. And I would go into just like putting highlights where they belong. Don't even worry about blending. Just like, you know, base coat, line, and put highlights, a few highlights like where they belong, where the light's shining. Teach them to think about where the light is shining. Like that's your beginning. And that should give them a pretty darn good model, honestly. And doing the lining should give them also a better brush control so that they can do finer details and feel like they're less fail. That's my step order. And I keep talking about this, but I have this all written up in a PDF for my Patreon, and I keep meaning to put it up for free, and I keep forgetting. So hold on and let me make a note of that. There. I have a sticky note. I'm going to put it on the top. So guys, my Patreon is patreon.com/paintingbig. And I will put up a freebie after this stream of kind of techniques in the order that I think it's most useful to master them in your painting. And not only just the stuff I just covered, but stuff like other source lighting and, you know, stuff like that, glowing objects, you name it, right? Stuff like that. Thalo. Is that the hashtag now? Thalo3? Thalo-free only happens if Sadie makes some. And I haven't been in contact, all right, so hello everybody. Hello. All right, let's see here. Where are we? Okay, so general, and this is a question I get a lot of, assembly rather than painting. Hold on, I think I missed one. Yeah, no, looks good actually. All right, so maybe, oh yeah, there we go. So, Chaos Master, you're working on a fire demon. Would it be better to assemble than paint, or paint than assemble? He's asking about color schemes. I can't answer that really, because when you're working on a fire demon, it depends on what you're trying to do, right? If you're trying to paint fire, then you probably want to work more with oranges and yellows, though, and less with red. Because if you look at a real fire, like a campfire, or even a big forest fire. If you look at pictures, big forest fires have more red in them. House fires, generally the bigger the fire, the more red you're going to see. But in general, fire is definitely more orange than the red is really the cast light from the fire. So I would say also I always paint and then assemble for me, always. Especially if you look and the bones kind of slots together pretty well, so you know that you can paint and you don't have any big gaps or anything left. Because for when you're just starting out, I know the big gaps are kind of intimidating. You don't know what to do with them, so you may want to like putty them in first and then paint the whole thing. But with a big thing like a fire demon, which usually has big wings and stuff, it can be really hard to paint those wings once you've attached them. And maybe the arms are going to block your brush trying to get to the wing or behind there. Anytime you put a thing on and it looks like it's going to make it difficult to paint the area around it, I always paint it and then attach it. I don't want, again, we're trying to lower the frustration level so that you don't put the model aside and don't finish it. So we've got to, essentially by doing that, you paint it first and then attach it. If you try to attach everything, it's going to be frustrating to paint. So that's what my thought process is. Reaper John isn't troll. Absolutely agreed. I'm answering questions. Hey, Bob and Julie. And I think I saw Jason on too. But yeah, Wapple's really good. Yeah, green users, there's a couple of different thoughts for that. I mean, you use less saturation usually in your shadows than you usually do on the sunlit or lit part of the mini. But a lot of people, like Michael Proctor, for example, do get away with putting a lot of saturated colors in their shadows, and it can look very good. If you're painting a model that's out under sunlight, the shadows usually are more saturated because you're getting a lot of that warm bounced light in the shadows. So, but they're still desaturated compared to your upper or lit areas. Like if you look at my hand right now, guys, and you look at the upper area, it's definitely lighter and it's warmer. And then if you look at the underside area, it's kind of grayed out. And that's what we mean by desaturated. So it means it's less bright, it's more grayish. So yes, Alter said, Numbat, thank you for the resub. Good morning. Yes, if I'm losing any questions in the chat, sorry chat. I've got so much in my my ANAMA channel to try to catch up on. So if you have a question, go to our Discord at Reaper Discord, go to ANAMA and put it down there at the end. I'm going to try to bust through this stuff. Do we want to do our first giveaway, Justin? Waiting for my disembodied voice. He probably wasn't expecting me to call on him. Justin. Oh well, I'll do another question. Yes, and thank you for the Discord link, everybody.
Sorry about that, Miss Ann. What'd you need?
Did you want to do our first giveaway?
Yeah, actually, we can do that. That's
all
perfect.
Right, let's do that. I like to do one at the beginning of the stream to reward the people who are early. So go ahead.
Absolutely.
Get your hashtag
actually, these
free.
are the best chances you're going to have because there's only 60 entries. So
right, exactly. So this is your best chance to win. We are giving away a Dagon and an Altar of Dagon.
All right. Our first winner is...
Thank you for the gift subs, Numbat.
The Calisandra.
Ooh, Calisandra, you get a Dagon and an altar. That's fantastic. Congratulations. I hope you have fun painting him. Yay. Does she have to do an exclamation point claim?
No, not for this one. So it's okay.
So she's good. Yay. Super fantastic. Oh, trying to mark the questions I've done with the green arrow. Oh, that's what the green arrow is. Thanks, John. Okay, so next one. Let's just keep going on. Hey, everybody. I see some people from Paint Club. Hi, Sentimental. Hi. Okay. Praetorian, first of all, he starts with dumb question, : Okay, nothing is a dumb question, guys. Even if you feel like you were the noobiest noob on the planet, asking the noobiest noob questions, there are still other people in chat who are also new and who secretly wish they could ask that question but are too shy to do so. So always ask your question no matter how stupid you think it is. Often it's not a stupid question at all. In fact, I've never been asked this one, but it's a very good point. So Praetorian asks, when you say a 3-to-1 ratio, is that taking into account that I've been told that Reaper paints are already thinned a little? Okay, anybody who told you that Reaper paints are thinned a little is not understanding Reaper paint. They are not actually pre-thinned paints. What we do is we use a base that is not as thick and goopy as other people's, so the paint is a little more fluid out of the bottle. This leads to people believing that, well, we must be using the same stuff as everybody else, so obviously we put water in our paint. No, this is not the case. Absolutely not the case. This is just the qualities of the base that we are using. I mentioned earlier, guys, about how other paint lines are all like a little bit of that goopy kind of, thick feel to them. That's the resins. That's the base that they are using chemically. It's the way it acts. And we chose to go in a different direction because we wanted the paint to actually stick to the models, among other things. We also wanted it to thin really well for blending and layering and washing and glazing and all that stuff. So the differences in Reaper's fluidity are purely the actual base that we use. We do not add water. We do add flow improver to all of our paints, which may also have created that misconception because a lot of flow improvers say thin with water. We don't do that. We know you're going to be thinning your paint with water probably, so we just put the flow improver in just straight. So don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. Yes, every ratio I give is based with our paint in mind. So if you try to use ratios that I'm giving you for a thicker paint like Scale 75 or Vallejo, you're going to find that you have to add a lot more water with those other paint lines. It's just the way they are. That's because it's just, as I said, it's a thicker base. So to get it to the right consistency for layering, you have to work harder. And for washes and for glazes, all the rest of it. You got to work a little harder with those thicker paints to get them to where you need them, which is another reason we went with these bases. We didn't want you guys to have to work. It used to frustrate the heck out of me back in the day when I used other paint lines and I had to add a crap ton of water before I could even use the paint in the way I wanted to use it. So Reaper Master Series, cuts some of that work out for you. Hey, Paladin, would you put that into, I actually answered that. I have an additives thing on my Patreon, but drying retarder slows the drying of your paint. Wash medium is pre-mixed with water in it so that you just have to add it to build a wash. And I didn't see the other one. Maybe if it was brush on sealer. Sealer is obviously a sealer. So they're different usage. Drying, things like that, usually the name is clues you into what it is. A medium is always meant to be added to a paint to create a certain effect. So when you see things like a wash medium or a metallic medium, which we don't make, but other companies do, it means you're supposed to be adding those to your paint to make a wash or make a metallic, per the name. A sealer is meant to seal your model once you've done painting it, although some people do a layer and route. And I also use that to build washes often. My wash formula has brush-on sealer in it to help keep the paint in suspension. But drying retarder is exactly what it says. Sounds like it retards drying, so it'll slow dry essentially. All right. Let's see. Otherwise, guys, remember I'm taking questions mostly from the AMA Discord. So I'm not going to be able, because chat is flying by, so I'm not going to be able to catch everybody. If I see a quick question like that, I can try to. Oh, you added it to the Discord already, Reaper John? Well, I just answered it. So yeah, but that's good. If John, if you're going to catch chat, then I won't even bother. I'm just going to keep chugging. Other than to, of course, look over and thank people for subbing. All right, let's see here. How do you paint? Praetorian also asks how you paint a 5 o'clock shadow on a face. All right, so probably the best way to do that, and it really depends on your hair color, but in general, if you're working with a 28 millimeter, you just want a little bit of a shadow here. Like it really is only a 5 o'clock shadow. When you're working with a big bust or something, and you want to do it then, you can actually do some hair texture, actually paint brush strokes like hair texture, but on a little 28 millimeter model, mix up like a warm gray, like maybe a stone gray, or maybe you even want to use like sometimes even a greenish shadow, but that's a little bit more complex. But usually a kind of a gray brown or a grayish color, and just put a wash just over the areas that you want to have that shadow. And then just kind of wick off. Don't leave it pool as much as you would a normal wash. Just kind of like use the edge of your brush, like rinse out your brush and get it damp, just not wet, and kind of wick off the excess, kind of pull the excess paint off of there. And it should dry with kind of a grayed layer, and that will look like a 5 o'clock shadow. IG Girl, yeah, I see that glazing medium question. We don't actually make a glazing medium, but it is a quality of the base that they're using. So if John puts that into the chat, then I can get to it, hopefully, because that's a very interesting question. I love paint chemistry questions. All right. Is there a way to find... Actually, somebody asked if there was a way to find a list of all the clear brights, and John linked that in the Discord, so and answered it already, so don't worry about that one. Thanks Chris Air for the tip on the Paint Rack app. Yeah, I've heard that it is quite good if you're trying to organize your paint collection. Bean, what is your favorite non-meat food to grill? Pineapple. Every time. Favorite to grill, favorite to smell grilling, favorite to eat. I also love grilled zucchini. I don't like grilled asparagus. I prefer to do asparagus in the oven. But yeah, so I am a vegetable fan. I do love vegetables, but I have my favorite ways to prepare them all, and grilled pineapple rocks. Alrighty, let's see here. Stephanie says she's having the hardest time using Sophie Champagne, which is, for those of you who know, is kind of an oyster color. That's kind of a pale gold. Tried it over light and dark paints and also as a highlight on another metallic, and nothing seems to look right. Any tips? Sophie Champagne, Stephanie, is really meant to be its own thing. I think probably the best way to use it is going to be to put down a base color like Desert Stone, which is maybe, you know, kind of in the same color category as Sophie Champagne, and just use Sophie Champagne on top of it, and to highlight it with a bit of pearl white, adding a bit of pearl white into the Sophie Champagne. Because it's an unusual color, it's not really meant to be a pale gold. It's a little bit muted, right? So it's not going to look quite right when you try to use it to highlight gold. But you can highlight almost any metallic by adding our pearl white 9100 into it. So what I would do is use it for itself, like create a champagne colored dress maybe. You might try it with slightly different undertones, like trying it with a more of a dark pink underneath it might be interesting. But I think that probably the closest color to it, and remember, you should always undercoat your metallics with a medium to dark color because it's going to make them look shinier. And I think the closest color that would probably work with it would be Desert Stone, which is a bones color. But yeah, it's Grax also is saying what he has used it. I'm not as much a Peaches fan, guys. I'm coming around a little bit to peach cobbler after living in Texas for 17 years, but I've always preferred other fruits. I tend to be very strongly in favor of apple and then a bunch of tropical fruits and strawberries and raspberries. I do like berries of almost all sorts. But yeah, peaches, for some reason, they have to be prepared specifically very well. I do like them in salsa and stuff, and I like to use them as subs for tomatoes. That said, all right, now back on. Woohoo! Let's see here. Hopefully that helps you, Stephanie. All right. Balance says, Anna was going through some stuff, found these old paint samples from Reaper. Are these from before the droppers became the norm? And they're showing the old paint pots. Do I even? Yeah, I do. It's full of skulls from one of the old times when we were selling skulls at ReaperCon. So the paint pot they're talking about looks like this. Although mine is full of little tiny metal skulls. Don't ask. Or if you want to ask later on the AMA. But anyway, yeah, that's Pro Paints. Pro Paints was the line that Reaper was making at the time that they first brought me down and a bunch of other artists for the first ever Reaper Artist Conference, which later kind of morphed into ReaperCon, although sometimes then Artist Conference pops up separately here and there. But essentially it was bringing all the artists down to learn from each other and also to give feedback about Reaper's paints and brushes and stuff like that. So that was a paint line they were making at the time, and after I gave them feedback on it, you guys have all heard this story probably, that I pretty much said, yes, thank you, John, for reminding them to put their questions in the Discord. I'm trying to get through as fast as I can. But the story goes, as told by various people, is we brought Anne down. She was like the last one who came down, and she gave us feedback on our paint, and she said that it sucked and she could do better. This was not quite what happened, but it was very honest. Let's just say I was very truthful about what I felt about Pro Paint and like how I felt that some other paint lines had done things a little bit better. So what this got me into was that one, they offered me a job at the end of the weekend, and two, one of the first things on my to-do list after I got hired was to create a new paint line. So we actually did keep Pro Paint around for a bit more beyond that, obviously while we were making Master Series, and the two paint lines were concurrent. They were partners for a while. They both ran while we looked at sales and reception. So yes, it's a lull for sure, Gren. Yes, artist conferences, yeah. It just takes so much, it takes so much time away is the problem with the artist conference, and it's hard to monetize. Sometimes we do it as an experiment. Yeah, from 16 years ago, it would still have skulls racks. Yeah, those who may have, yeah, the skulls stopped about, I want to say maybe 5 years after I started. They may have started they stopped in the mid to late aughts, I want to say. I started in 2003 at Reaper. And it was when Master Series started really getting going, and we realized that we were having to pay a caster all day, every day, just to cast skulls, which were free. So we were paying somebody's salary year round to make something free, which just doesn't work out on a business perspective. So yeah, that's when skulls got pulled out. Balrog John, thank you so much for the resub. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, and then later on, it was just as well because the Pro Paint pots, the company that made them, actually canceled that mold, like, so we couldn't get them anymore, which is kind of a shame because I always liked them. I always thought they sealed really well for a paint pot paint. I still, as you can see, I still have a couple of the pots sitting around here and there. Let me see. Breezy, I just answered the how much of a mini to assemble and when. As I said, if you kind of like hold the parts together and see if any part is blocking you from easily painting any other part, hold off assembling that part. What you may want to do if you don't want to paint the entire thing to a finish in pieces is paint the part that's going to be blocked. So like if Rocky has his arm over his chest on his treasure chest, what you might do is paint the area, at least like do a basic, base coat, shadow, etc. on it, and then glue the arm on and paint the arm. So pretty much use your best judgment as to what is going to make it the easiest possible project for you and not make you frustrated. Let's see here. Rainbow Sculptor. Hey there, Christine. Found this macro photo of a bearded dragon. Was wondering what the best approach would be to get this effect when painting one of my many Reaper dragons. So a bearded dragon, of course, has long spines, as you all know. And she's got a picture up there. A lot of people liked it on the Discord. But if you look at it very closely, what you see is that, for one thing, you'd want a line around all the scales. See that really dark line going between the scales there? Like, that's one of the things you'd want to do. And you can see the dark shadow at the root of each of those spines. So you know right away you've got to start with like a walnut or a brown liner. And then you've got that mid-tone reddish color coming up. I'd say maybe chestnut brown or maybe an orange, maybe even like volcanic orange if you want to be a little brighter. And then it looks like it goes up to an off-white. So what you're doing then is I would paint all the scales very dark. Then I would paint over it and say cinnamon red, maybe from Bones, 9404. And take it up maybe toward a volcanic orange, or you can go a little more brown if you want to, because it is a little bit more earthy colored there. But then from there, go straight up into like a linen white, up to a pure white on the very tips, to get that effect. And you should get very close to that effect on your dragon. All right, next, let's see. I'm keeping an eye on the time too, so we can do our next giveaway soon. All right, you kind of had it, Valandar, but I would not do like as much. Well, you could start with a dark brown. Nebulous Misty put up an example of one she painted kind of like that. Let's see here. Valandar said, so if a Pathfinder color tends to have a slightly more transparent pigmentation than the bones or core, does that mean they're slightly better for using in glazes? Yeah, any paint from Bones even has a couple of colors that are a little more transparent, and this is not a downside, guys. This is not a downside. Think about it. You're glazing, you're washing, you're trying to blend. All these things take thinned paint, which means that paint that is not full, like high coverage, actually works better with you on this. I've tried so hard for years to say that, gosh, transparency is a thing. If all my paints were high coverage, I'd start to hate painting. I'd switch to tube paint, because when you're trying to do almost anything other than a base coat or a wet blend, you want paint that's going to thin and get a little bit more transparent, because that's how you get those blending effects. That's how you get washes to work. That's how you get glazes to work. So yeah, any paint that you find from any paint line that seems a little see-through, don't just throw it out and say, oh, I hate this paint, it's see-through. Like, next time you can use it for a glaze or something, try. It's going to be a lot easier to get it to the consistency you want, and it's going to work better. Because any paint with coverage is going to fight you when you try to make it see-through. So that's the thing. A wash that has high coverage, is built with a high coverage paint, is going to dirty the areas on the top of the model more than you want it to, more than a transparent paint would. So everything in a paint, transparency, opacity, saturation, desaturation, it's all the tool. All of it is useful. All right, let's see here. Preach it. That's right, darn it. I believe in transparency. You don't want me to switch to tube paint, do you? I don't want to switch to tube paint. I'm very happy with my current Reaper Master Series model. All right. Breezy, I get how gold NMM triad works, but I'm stumped on the copper one with the verdigris effects. Hint. Well, that's great. That's a great question, actually. So that's 9304, 5, and 6. So what we ran into there, Breezy, is that I felt like I needed to put a verdigris in that triad. And I also felt like the shadow for copper, like if I had done it with like that mid or bright orange copper and then the really, really new penny copper and then a shadow, I felt that the shadow would essentially be identical to a color that already existed in the line. And so what I decided to do instead was to include the verdigris in there. And what happens then is that people get confused, right? So what you should do, guys, is add one more color to that NMM copper triad, and add russet brown, 91.99. 91.99 is the perfect shadow for that copper. It turns into that kind of warm brown, dark brownish look that copper tarnishes to. Then if you highlight with the more bright, the orangier copper and with the new penny copper on the very highlights, and you use the verdigris in there, you can get some cool effects. But that's what I do. That's what I do. And that's why it happened. It's like I tried to make a shadow for it and it turned out pretty much exactly like russet brown. And the rule in paint creation is don't make anything as too close to a previous color. Otherwise we'd just be charging you guys double for the same color, which to me has never seemed fair. But yeah. Let's see. Almost any, in Master Series, Core has more translucent colors, both because we weren't trying to make a high coverage line yet, and because, I was just trying to, it was pretty much like tube paint, right? The paint has the coverage of the pigments that you use in that one. So Core is really useful on that. When you get to HD and Bones, that's where we're definitely trying to up the coverage while still giving you better colors, but it does mean that some of those colors aren't as good for, aren't as transparent. In general, dark colors from all the lines will be slightly more transparent. That's just a thing because you depend on adding white to get a lot of opacity if you're doing it with pigment. So as you get lighter, you get higher coverage. That's why a lot of people say if you've got a really transparent color, add white to it, do a coat of that, and then put your transparent color over the top, and it'll cover, much easier. So let's see here. Rathmore, I've heard discussion of the European school or style of miniature painting. How does it compare and contrast with other styles? What other styles are there in popular miniature painting? There are as many styles as there are artists. I mean, look at Wapple's style. He's got a very painterly style that's very oil paint, very canvas style almost, which is because James comes from a 2D canvas background. And he carries that over, especially when he's oil painting. He carries that over to his work. The European style, although now it's really, with the advent of the internet, guys, it's like everything is crossing, right? Like I think David, my boyfriend, if you've seen his work, I think David paints in a very European style. And what it is it's very strong highlights and very stark shadows. So if you look at Sergio Rubio Calvo's work, and this is kind of a Spanish/Italian school. A lot of Spanish painters paint this way. It's very high contrast, very, very like intense lighting and darks versus lights. So that's kind of what you're dealing with a lot, but not all of the European painters are like that. And then you get to the Asian painters from Russia, like Kirill. Kirill does ultra realism, right? So that's a totally different style. When you see Games Workshop does a totally different style again. It's just doing more of a cartoony thing, right? So it's looking for pop and impact, but it's like also doing like line highlights and stuff like that. So it's not trying to so much blend with things on a lot of their models. Not off the top of my head, Dogfather, you've got to test it yourself. But in general, like I said, darker and brighter colors tend to be a little more transparent, which works for washes, right? Because you're looking for dark colors for washes. The liners are slightly more transparent. I've said a lot of this stuff in past streams, but I mean, I could sit here and waste your time for 20 minutes listing every paint I could think of that's a little more transparent. But in reality, just think if it's darker or if it's brighter, it has a chance to be more transparent. Not always, depends on, but. And everything is relative too. Like you could make a transparency scale of 1 to 5. And so it isn't just that it's either a 1 or a 5, right? There are 3s in there. There are 2s in there. There are 4s in there. So it's not that easy. Let's see here. Yeah. I mean, the freehand style. I don't really call that a style though, Valendar. Like, I don't know. Like, I'd have to see a major movement of it, I guess. there's specific artists who do that, right? Like and that is a particular, it is their style, right? So it's like I guess the question is, does Rathmore mean broad styles, which is what I was thinking of. It's more like a national tendency toward a certain style, like you do see in Spanish painting. You do see more like Kirill does in Russian painting. And by the way, that fine tons of freehand thing also probably comes from Russian painting, because they do the fine textures and that crazy freehand. I mean, you've seen Kirill do it, and it's mind-blowing. What's her name? Olga, isn't she Russian also, who does the crazy like war elephants and stuff and historicals with all the freehand? But yeah, Polish. See, all right. So Eastern European and Asian. Then you're gonna see that. Dogfather, we sell a copper and a memtriad. Actually, I just answered a question about it. I don't know if it's still in print. That could be a question. I'm not sure. I think so, but I don't remember all the cancellations off the top of my head. All right, but yeah. So, and then you've got like kind of our American school that comes more from. It comes more from the gaming side. So we tend to have not as punchy contrast. Like, we don't do the harsh lighting effect that you'll see in general on a lot of our figures. You'll see a more subtle, softer style, but then you've got people like Matt DiPietro, who does do a very, like, crazy, like, very, very strongly lit, very dramatic paint style. So like I said, it varies by the artist. And because of the cross-pollination of the internet, you aren't so much seeing regional styles as you're seeing painters slowly develop toward the style that appeals to them. Like my painting is closer to Kirill than it is to the USA standard style anymore, because that's what I want to do. I want to do realism, and I want to do textures, and I want to do crazy freehand too, though, guys. So, but I didn't do minimal highlighting underneath that crazy freehand. I think they can go hand in hand. So it becomes at some point a style breaks down to a personal decision too. And then you've got people who trailblaze, right? Who are the first to do a thing. And then people are like, oh, that's awesome. Let's do it. Whoever invented sketch style. Stuff like that, which is underpainting, which I do a lot of too. So yeah. Yeah, and then you've got the people who use lots of mediums. Unless there's just go to Putty and Paint and look around. All over the place. I think Putty and Paint is a more useful style than someplace like Simon. I don't even know if Simon is really even a gallery anymore. But Putty and Paint, where individual painters have their own galleries and their own sculptors have their own galleries too, is a good site. All right, let's see here. What 5 Reaper paints and paint products should every miniature painter own? Note, I don't need to be the only 5 paints, but obviously the most useful. Brown liner. Pure white again and again and again. Pure white. Reaper Pure White is the best white on the market for miniature painting, bar none. There is nothing to compare to it. Pure white, 9039. Buy it now. Our brush on sealer is very useful as a matte medium if you don't want to buy a big bottle of matte medium from your local art store, and if you want to make sure the finish is compatible with Master Series. If I had to go beyond that, I go through a ton of walnut brown. I find it is useful for creating a muted shadow color for any other color. If I don't want to search for a shadow and I just want to mix a darker color into a color to make a shadow, I use walnut brown every time. That's 9136. Brush on sealer is the 9107. Let me think. Who else? Like, after that, it's really up to your style. Like, Flow Improver, obviously. But really, just as an example, guys, I've been doing an experiment with somebody else's paint line where I'm trying to paint only in that. And the only thing that I add to it is Reaper Flow Improver and Pure White for my highlights. Because I won't go away from that pure white. Because that's how strongly I feel that there is no white as good as our pure white. Ever. No, I don't use off-whites anymore, Sarduki. I use pure white for everything. The off-whites almost never make it out of my drawer. Like, they're mostly in a bag. Creamy Ivory is probably the closest, 9144. If you must use an off-white, I would go for Creamy Ivory. Bleached linen can also be useful, but if you're looking for a pure white, nothing beats this, guys. Nothing. It has the most white pigment. It is the most solid. It is the best thinner. Like, it never, ever goes chalky for me. It's seriously, this. I cannot say. Not Void Blue. Void Blue is like a specialty blue for me. I would say Cyan Blue is a little more useful, 9117. I've been using that recently, so you guys may have seen it on the Sphinx. Tan Skin is our most versatile skin color. I just did a PDF on it for my Patreon to show you that you can turn it into infinite other skin colors with just one mix. It's just so easy. So yeah, pure white is best. That is it. Yeah, Shadow Raven, exactly. So there we go. Oh, well, let's see here. Where are we? In 10:15. Let's do another giveaway, Justin.
Alrighty. Do you want to do the last one at the very end of the show, or do you want to do
Yeah.
it before the show ends?
Probably like maybe 5 or 10 minutes before the show ends. I like to like. I don't like to end necessarily on the giveaway. I like to maybe answer one more question while you're doing the giveaway. So. All right, everybody got their hashtag free in? We are giving away Dagon and his altar. Get your very own fishy god ready to come up and eat the brains and other body parts, because, you know, there's nutrients there, of your adventuring party.
All right, Miss Ann. I just drew our
Who
second
is
winner.
it? Who is it?
Our second winner is Cooves.
Coobs! You get a Dagon, Coobs! Everybody give a round of applause. Round of applause for Coobs.
And if you're new or you just got in, go ahead and type hashtag
Yes
free now
way,
because
Coobs!
we will be doing one more.
Yeah, if you just got in, do type your hashtag free again, because you want to make sure you enter into the last drawing. We're giving away a lot of Lovecraft today. Everybody loves Lovecraft, right? Can't get enough. Plus, it's Kevin's, like, one of my favorite sculpts from Kevin. Kevin Williams, our staff sculptor. So yes, get your hashtag free in, everybody. I'm going to go back and see what we got going on here. Let me just check and see. All right, cool. Making sure I'm caught up on everything. Pendrake, you are so silly. Are you griefing me? What existing paints would make a good flamingo triad? All right, so... so, okay, I would probably use BCA Pink, which is sadly, well, it is still available because it's October, so if you want your bottle of Boob Pink, get it now. The problem is a lot of our pinks have gone away, but I think that Milani Rose from Pathfinder would be a good base as well. The thing is that if I was going to make a flamingo triad, I would actually do 3 colors that were very different. So I would choose like Milani Rose, but then my shadow would be Fire Red, because you want it to go down to a very dark pink, and we don't have one of those right now. So I would probably mix the Milani Rose and the Fire Red. Fire Red is 9004 to get a really vibrant hot pink, because you want that color in flamingos. They're not just pale. Then I would highlight with the Milani Rose and then with some pure white. If you wanted to, you could even go up to like a rosy skin color. Like you could actually go up to pale flesh in bones, or you could go up to rosy highlight, depending on. Flamingos aren't just a flat color. I mean, if you look at pictures of flamingos, some of them have more peachy feathers, some of them are more reddish. You know, they've got all sorts of varieties. So that would be what I would do, Pendrake. There you go. There are your flamingo colors. Now you can get, you know, Master Series paint to paint your yard flamingo. Be sure to airbrush that Milani Rose on when they're over a white undercoat, by the way. All right. Let's see. Are there any classic fantasy monsters or races you haven't painted? If so, why not? Because they weren't assigned to me when I was a staff painter at Reaper Miniatures, Jetta. I've painted goblins, I've painted kobolds, I've painted orcs, I don't think I've ever painted a hobgoblin, because we really didn't have, like, great hobgoblin figures, I don't think. Or no, yes, I did. For Legendary Encounters, I did paint a hobgoblin. I painted gnolls. I love gnolls. I painted dragons. I painted an Odiug. I painted a rust monster. I'm trying to think. I think there's pretty much everybody, unless, like I said, unless it just wasn't a Reaper figure. I've never painted a Beholder, but I have the one from the current line of, what's his name? The current line that Dungeons and Dragons of Miniatures are doing. So I have that Beholder. It's a great sculpt. And that would be my first Beholder, probably. Just because some models are I painted a Displacer Beast. I painted, I'm trying to think, painted a mermaid, painted a sea lion, painted a hellhound, painted giants, etc. Yeah. So that's kind of it. I painted a lot of stuff when I was painting stuff for Reaper when I was a staff painter before paint got so busy that I went entirely to Master Series paint production. Yeah. Nosgers or WizKids. Yeah, the WizKids Beholder is really nice. Really, really nice. And I'm painting a Sphinx, exactly. So you see, I'm painting almost everything. There's probably stuff I haven't painted. I don't think I've ever painted a Sturge, for example. But usually though, when I do D&D, I want to concentrate on painting characters, unless the monster is like going to be a major player in the game. Then if the monster is a major NPC, then I'll paint it for sure. Yeah, otherwise I tend not to paint my monsters as much for games, because it's already a lot of work to get characters painted. And you don't want to paint a monster just if you're going to kill it in 5 minutes. All right, let's see here. Working on Mercalor, painting the armor with ancient bronze as the midtone. What would you use for highlighting? Yeah, dragon bronze or ancient. Is it ancient gold? It's 9050. It depends on. The other thing you could use is my favorite, tarnished brass, 9198. I used that recently. Actually, a mixture of that and dragon bronze on the pirate girl figurehead we've been working on here and there on the stream. And it makes a nice kind of tarnishy color. And then if you put some dark green in the cracks, you can get like that verdigris effect. I love those colors. I love ancient bronze. It's a fantastic color. Let's see here. Tips for getting acrylic paint out of clothing. Yes, actually. Do I have it here on my... No, it's all over there. Winsor & Newton Brush Cleaner and Restorer. It is a fluid that is non-toxic. It does have an alcoholic reek, so you're going to have to deal with the smell like until you wash it. But that stuff, and always test it, of course, because some fabrics are delicate and you don't want to mess up the dye or whatever. So if it's a really good shirt, one, why are you painting in it? But if it's just a t-shirt or jeans, Winsor & Newton Brush Cleaner and Restorer, just kind of like drop it, put it in a dropper bottle, drop it onto the paint bit, kind of like scrape and rub at it so that you work it into the paint, because what that does is that makes the resins soften up. Then put it through the washer on hot. And it should get out most of it. You can do it twice if you want to, but I've had the most luck with that. And like I said, some fabrics you're just sunk, but in general, burn the clothes. Yes, but that gets really expensive these days, Jairus. Burning your clothing just gets really, really expensive. Yeah, thank you, Antique Gold. Let's see here. Trying to catch up. Where am I? Oh, yeah. Here we go. I need tips for picking your color scheme. I have essentially been painting the same 3 colors, but but you don't want to deviate? And you don't want to deviate from that? You're stuck? You're in a paint rut, Iggy? All of us get in paint ruts, Iggy. The answer is to look for a model that you're really excited to paint and try to pick a color outside of it. If you really don't want to deviate, you're like, I don't want to deviate, I just want to change up my 3 colors a little, try muting them all. If you like to paint with blue, green, and red, instead of painting with bright blue, green, and red, try painting with a red-brown, a blue-gray, and an olive-green. Try doing that. And that may actually kick you out enough that maybe you start stretching it a little further. But for me, it's always been right now I have an awesome witch bust that I got from Ignis Art. And I really want to do her in really warm colors, like warm oranges and olives and golds, which is definitely a departure for me. But it took that model to make me want to go there. So sometimes it's just finding the right model that obviously you can and it's being aware of your paint rut too. If you really, really want to, get out of it, you can push yourself to get out of it. I mean, David always loves red and teal or orange and teal, and that's his paint rut. I tend to be purple and gold. That's my paint rut. But I do make an effort to get out of there every once in a while, because otherwise I just get sick of staring at the same colors. Let's see here. The other thing I do, by the way, to get great ideas for new paint schemes is I go to art galleries, or just, you could look up for art online. But going to art galleries and looking at the different stuff like Impressionist stuff or Baroque stuff or portraits can give you really interesting ideas for color combos that you might not otherwise use. Because, of course, the colors of past society, what colors they liked and favored were different from some of our modern palettes that we like. So, yeah, that's a great Ignis bust, isn't it, Dogfather? Yeah, I can't wait to paint her. She's all prepped. I'm just killing me. All right, let's see here. Reaper John put up Paladin's questions about flow improver, drying retardant, and wash medium. Flow improver is an additive. You add it to your paint to break surface tension and keep it in solution a little bit better. Every Reaper paint already has flow improver added to it, folks. You do not need to add extra. The only time I add extra is if I'm trying to do really fine details where I want that extra bit of surface tension break to get the paint off the brush in really small increments. So if you were doing eyeballs, you might thin your paint with maybe flow improver instead of water. That sort of thing. Drying retarder is just what it says. It retards drying time, so it makes your paint dry a little slower. Do be aware you only want to use a tiny amount of it, a really tiny amount of it, because if you add too much, your paint's it's not going to dry. It's just going to get goopy and tacky. Also, if you add too much, it can go shiny. So you got to be very careful. You only need a little to retard drying time. Wash medium, like I said, a medium is something that you add to paint. So in this case, you add this medium to your paint to make a wash. It cuts the corner of trying to do my formula that I usually do. It's a little bit different from my standard wash formula, but in general, it'll work like my wash formula. So 1 drop of paint, 6 drops of wash medium. Shake wash medium extremely well before you use it. Parts of it will settle out. Shake it really, really well before you add it to your paint. Make sure everything's in solution. And then, yeah, IG Girl, your glazing medium question is on there. So glazing medium is, I think it's kind of a product that was grabbed from the 2D art market, and that's why nobody's really fine-tuned it for our use yet. Glazing medium in the art world, the 2D art world, is glossy. In fact, almost all finishes are more glossy in the 2D art world. That's why. And so I suspect that somebody said, hey, glazing medium, this sounds perfect, and, grabbed it, and maybe they didn't have a fine enough matting medium, so they didn't really mat it out. They just went straight with it so that it would be smoother. And they figured in art world, they'd figure if you want a matte finish, you're just going to use a spray. So, that's possibly what the people who invented that glazing medium thought, is that you just seal it to the level of dullness or brightness that you wanted afterwards. But that's probably why. A lot of paint companies don't work. A lot of hobby companies that produce paint lines are not actually paint companies. So they just tell, the paint company roughly what they want, and the paint company makes it, and the miniature company approves it when they feel it's what they wanted. Vallejo is the exception. They are an actual paint company that makes paint for a lot of hobby companies. So they know what they're doing, but because they're not a miniatures company, they come from the cell painting and movie art world and the traditional art world, they may not be thinking, oh, everybody wants a dull finish. So maybe we could find a matting agent that would matte out our glazing medium. They may not think that way. This is the power of Reaper, right? This is the power of having somebody who is a painter and an artist working on your paint line, because then we don't make those mistakes. When we have a sealer or a medium, it's made to have the same finish that our paint does, so you don't see those discrepancies. Let's see here. What is the best way to learn color theory so we can understand how colors go together and how they mix with each other? There are two books, Asilidon, that you should pick up. One is Betty Edwards' book on color. It's got a subtitle too, but Betty Edwards, she also did drawing on the right side of the brain, I think. Left side of the brain? Don't remember. But Betty Edwards is brilliant. Her book on color is really interesting. It's an easy read, and she gives you a lot of little exercises that help you understand things like contrast and saturation. And you don't even need to really do the exercises. You can just read through and look at her examples. But if you do the exercises, you're going to learn a lot more, just like college. So Betty Edwards' Color is the one that I would always start with. And the second one is Color and Light by James Gurney, the master, he who did Dinotopia. James Gurney is a master of naturalistic painting and plein air painting, as well as drawing and painting excellent dinosaurs for Dinotopia and for the covers of National Geographic. He's a pro. And Color and Light is a great book to follow up on after you've read Betty Edwards' book. Those two things. Color theory is something that you there's principles to it. And, taking one of my color theory courses is also a good idea. That tries to kind of speed you through some of the basics. But otherwise, those two books, I love them. I continually go back to them. I always recommend them. I think they're the best on the market for it. Yep. A Course in Mastering the Art of Mixing Color. Yeah, that's the Betty Edwards' subtitle. Thank you, David Clearman. Let's see here. Oh yeah, paint freezing. Never allow paint to freeze. If it freezes solid, it's done. It's done. Put a fork in it. You won't be able to put a fork in it because it'll be solid. All right, let's see here. Does the different base for Reaper paints mean possible problematic interactions with commercial artist mediums like Golden or Liquitex matte medium? Valendar, when we first started Master Series Paint, every once in a while, somebody would report that with Golden medium, they had a problem. But then I think that base was actually canceled and we had to switch bases. And I don't think I've heard anything in the last 10 years about problematic mixes. If it's acrylic, if it's acrylic, it's acrylic. And what you're seeing when you see a paint interaction is a difference in pH. That's usually what you're seeing. There's a bunch of different stuff that goes into a paint, and it results in a certain pH. And different pigments have a different pH, different lines and resins have a different pH, all of this stuff. So every once in a while, you're going to run across a medium or a something that just has, is formulated for a line of paint that has a slightly different pH, just different enough that it's going to react weirdly when you put it with yours. The outside rule is always that if you buy another company's product, mix it with Master Series, test it out before you actually start using it on a large scale. Just always test. You can also always ask on our Facebook or on our forum to see if anybody's had a bad experience with it. Thank you. Thank you for the Prime sub, Zorblack. Yes, welcome. Welcome. Normally I'm painting and talking about painting during this time frame, but today is our AMA, an Ask Me Anything, and our giveaways, so it is, it's a brand new thing. But yeah, if you're in for painting tips, come on back all weekdays from 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 to 1 o'clock p.m. All right. We're almost there. We're almost there. Welsh Gamer Guy was wondering what tips you have for a brush with a few fraying strands. Thank you, Reaper John, for capturing all these questions, by the way. Welsh Gamer Guy, I can show you that on camera here. Let me get up my other, my cam so I can see it, and let me go down to brush cam. All right, so let's zoom way in. This is my camera that I typically use. Let's see. This is how good we can get. This is how close we can get to this, guys. Let's get really, really close there. All right. So if you have, let me get my glasses on so I make sure I can do this brush surgery well and not result in people going eek. Yeah, Heshizu, that's probably, especially if you're using something like Tamiya, the Tamiya, and some of those other brands are acrylic, but they have a different base, and so they do not mix well. Essentially, if a paint line has its own thinner, that's a clue that if it isn't just thinnable with water, that's a clue that it may have problems playing with other paint line. All right, so if you see, let's see if I can get this brush to split. It's actually a good brush, but like, okay, let's see. There we go. I've made it split. So let's see, you've got that. You take your X-Acto knife, you very gently separate out that hair. Here, let me stay on camera. This is the problem with doing this really close, is that it's hard to stay on camera. So you separate out that hair you follow it down very gently, just kind of pull it out. Then when you get down to the ferrule, I'm not actually going to do this, but when you get down here, you go snip, and you just press down on this metal part and you nick it off. And what that does is, now I will apologize to my poor brush, which is actually an excellent brush. So when you've got stray hairs, that's what you do. And the reason you do it that way instead of trying to pull it out or to cut it is if you cut it, you can't ever get like way down toward the bottom. You're always going to have some little stubbly sticking out, which can disrupt your brush. And also it's just annoying to deal with. And if you try to pull it out, you're actually going to loosen up or possibly destroy how all of the hairs are put together in the brush ferrule. And that will make your brush like split or splay or just have issues beyond issues. So always just kind of tease the hair out with your X-Acto knife, go straight down very gently, get it separated, and then nick it off against the ferrule. I abuse my brushes all to heck and beyond, but for some reason, because I rinse them so often, they still love me. All right, so let's go back to face cam. Oh no, I'm gonna get you guys this week's solution. Bummer. Here, there we go. I forgot because I was so used to just looking at chat this thing. All right, Discord. Where is our chat? There we are. Hopefully that helped you, Welsh Gamer Guy. Let's see here. What does my paint setup look like? Particularly how my paints are set up. Oh, Nani. They aren't. All right, so anybody on my stream knows that I have little groups of paints that like always stay on my desk. And this is all of my dark shadows and all of my dark browns and my pure white. All of those things always stay on my desk because I am always reaching for a brown, for leather, or for whatever, or for walnut for shading. And so I'm always, you haven't seen this sploosh in a while, yes. And so since those colors, the color you are always reaching for, just keep it on your desk. Why bother to keep digging it out? Anything else like that's for a special project that I only work on, maybe a special project every once in a while, everything else like that has its own baggie. So like for one of my models, seriously, she uses a specific green and a specific purple. And also 2 specific skin tones that I don't normally use. So I keep a bag separate for her so that I know and can put hands on all of the colors I need for her if I get her out to paint on her. Otherwise, I have a drawer. I have all my paints separated by color, by hue. So all my reds are together, all my oranges, all my yellows, all my greens, all my light browns, all my off whites, all my gray is with black and white. I have a bag for metallics, stuff like that. And that's in a big box, but the colors I use most frequently, my MVP colors, I keep in a little drawer. I have a little caddy here with a couple of drawers that sits right next to me. It's on wheels. And one drawer is I use these colors all the time drawer. It has about, I want to guess, about 100 paints in it right now. And it's a good selection of reds, oranges, yellows, everything. It's got essentially my picks from every hue in our paint line. The stuff that I tend to reach for. So let's see here. So the answer is it's messy. I actually don't own every color in Master Series because I can mix so many of them just from memory, so I can cheat. And a lot of these colors I just keep on hand for if I have to do like a PDF for my Patreon. I do a lot of PDFs on my $5 tier for how to use Master Series paint. So I keep those paints around, but I may not reach for those colors all the time. They're more likely a specialty color that I reach for every once in a while. Like Nut Brown from Bones is a good example. I'm going to do a PDF on that next month. Some of the more odd browns from Bones. So that might not be in my drawer. It'll be in my bag of browns. So I have it, but I don't often use it. Stuff like that. Yeah, no problem, Nani. I could be more organized, and part of me thinks that maybe I should be. But right now I'm living also in a small apartment, and I'm sharing this room with David, my boyfriend, who also does his painting in here. So I really need to reorganize my area, which is why I'm hoping my Patreon hits its next goal soon so I can go to IKEA or order some things from IKEA to reorganize my paint space. That's my next goal on the Patreon. So yeah. Don't soak it, Zorblack. Sorry. I'm gonna just pop over there and get that question right now from Zorblack. So all right. When you pick up your brush, chances are if you didn't put anything in it to keep it well pointed, let's go down to my cam again. Let me get over here. So if you don't put anything in your brush to keep it well pointed, it's probably going to kind of look like this when you pick it up. So yeah, you should always just put water in it. Never soak it in water. That's never necessary. Like soaking implies that the water needs time to penetrate bristles. It really doesn't. It just has to get them wet. So never soak your brush, Zorblack. However, getting water in my brush before I dip it in the paint is a key part of my painting. Absolutely key for controlling your paint. Oh, thanks. We just did, it should be actually, exclamation point, Anne's Patreon, I think, Reaper John. But Glossia, it is, patreon.com/paintingbig. There it is. The Nomad Zeke with the link. Yes, Twitch is for Curie Toys. My Twitch is for Curie Toys, and my Patreon is for like me existing and being able to buy groceries and pay for, car rent and things like that. And also, the next goal is at 1,700. We're really close. We're only a couple hundred away. But the next goal is so I can redesign my office and make it a lot more efficient, because I moved in, and you know how you move in and everything just gets unpacked, and then later you're just like, arg. That's where I am right now. So anyway, okay, so key point of Anne's painting style is to only to dip a little bit of the brush into the paint. So when I rinse my brush, I just use my fingertips to squeeze it out, and there's still a fair amount. Like if I tilt it, you see that shine? That means the bristles are still damp. There's still a little bit of water in there, but I've squeezed the majority of the water out, so it keeps a really good tip still. So when I load it up, I'm only going to load it up like maybe a quarter or a third of the way down the brush, and then I'm going to wipe most of that paint off. Now, if you were working with a dry brush that way, the paint that you have in your bristles out here is going to tend to dry pretty quick, right? Because it's next to all these dry bristles. But when you have a little bit of water in your brush and you only load a little paint on here, this water helps keep this paint fluid so that it actually comes off the brush well, even though there's only a little bit of it on there. So, yeah, you should not leave it to soak in water. Yeah, so yeah, groceries, eating. Eating is a good thing. I am a freelance artist now. I do work for Reaper part-time, but majority of my income is the Patreon, and it does keep me going. Thank you, everybody who is a patron. I appreciate you so, so much. Yeah, when is the Kiri Mini coming? Ask Ron. Ron needs to do a Kiri Mini. Actually, it was Jim Ludwig who owes me a Kiri Mini because he did a Leo Mini, my other dog. So anyway, so that's the thought behind it. And it's especially important when you're using tiny brushes. So when you're using a tiny brush, now you're going to be probably dipping about half of this tiny brush in the paint because it's so tiny. But then it's very important, even more important, to have a little moisture back here because the paint is going to want to dry so fast when it's in this tiny brush that any amount of moisture that you can have kind of backing it up to keep it from drying is a plus. So that's what the thought process is behind keeping your brush bristles just a little bit moist so that they keep a good tip and so they help your paint, essentially help you paint longer with the paint you've got. Alrighty. Honestly, Francis, then just dip the very tiny tip in the paint. Like just get really micro on it and just dip the tiniest tip. You will feel like it is way little paint, but then once you kind of like unload it on the side of your palette, you'll see it kind of spread up the brush a little bit. It'll be fine. Trust me. It is key to only get a little bit of paint on your brush. It is key. And if you find that you get too much paint on your brush, then just unload it a lot. Unload it a lot. So all right. Because I have to do that when I'm using, very thin paint, especially when I dip my brush in and it wicks right up into the brush. I have to unload my brush a lot. Actually, this is the $2 video for next month's Patreon, guys, is unloading your brush and how you do it with various consistencies of paint. So hopefully it will help you all. All right, back to questions. Question in context. Can you ever strip a mini wrong? I had a pre-primed mini. The Dragon Mini scales were done with primer instead of the sculpt. When I tried stripping the mini, hold on, let me go back to my face cam. I tried stripping the prime. I saw the scales were rubbing off. Then had somebody tell me I was doing it wrong. Honestly, I am not the person to ask Liquid Nebula because I don't believe in stripping models. I just paint over them, and I don't buy pre-painted minis, so I don't ever run into I'm buying this mini because it already has paint on it, but I really want to paint it. I've just never really enjoyed stripping models, so I don't worry about it that way. I don't think there is a right or wrong way to strip minis unless you're using too harsh of an agent. For the material that your mini is. Like if you're using on bones, you probably want to use simple green or something else that's relatively mild. You don't want to hit it with crazy stuff. Yeah, I mean, really the bottom line here, Liquid Nebula, is don't listen to what other people say. They usually know less than you do. Maybe that's just my personal opinion, but so what? One person said you stripped the mini wrong. Oh well. In the end, what matters is, yeah, see, that you're not, I don't think you when the scales are created with a primer, there's like no way to strip that mini. There's just no way. Like stripping it wrong, whatever, dude. I don't know who that was, but they were totally like not up on anything. With that one, I would have just painted over it Liquid Nebula. Unfortunately, you might not have realized that the scales were done with the primer at the time, and then there's nothing you could do. Don't feel bad about it. We all make mistakes like that. No, Graham, Goblin Dog Pink is actually Sin Spawn Pink. All right. Yeah, well, that used to be Sturge Pink. Now it's Sin Spawn Pink. All right. Alrighty. Yeah, just paint it over. Let me see here. Why does Reaper have a separate Pathfinder line of colors as just saying use Reaper paint? Because Pathfinder wanted their own line. Because we work closely with Paizo in our business. You guys know that we have the Pathfinder line of models, and we've done plastics and bones and all that kind of thing. So Paizo is one of our business partners, and they wanted a paint line of their very own. So that's an easy answer for you, Francis, because, when they asked us for it, because they're already a business partner, we said yes. And so they sent us swatches, and we and I formulated all the colors based on their the swatches that they sent us. They sent us what am I thinking of? Brain can't work, but they sent us the colors to do, and I matched them. But yeah, it's an unusual line, right? Sarduki, they picked a lot of colors that we didn't pick. I like that they have a lot of pinks, and I like their skin tones. I like some of the blue greens and the purples. There's some good stuff in there. Is there a better way to portray wetness rather than just slapping a gloss coat on the part that you want to be wet? Like wet sand, for example, or a fish sleeping out of water. Would that just be tacky on a display piece? And it would be better to just leave as is. Honestly, Margaret, gloss is used because it's the easy road. And if you're using anything like water effects, like, where is Spirit Beast? I still have Spirit Beast around here somewhere. Spirit Beast is like, yeah, I've been sitting here for months waiting for you to finish me, girl. That's what Spirit Beast says. Giving me guilt. So Spirit Beast has got water effects, right? He has gloss because I was using translucent woodland scenics water effects. Once you use a special effect that is like itself like dependent on being glossy, then you've really got no choice but to go gloss. So you know, when you do these translucent water splashes like I did here with the waves coming up, then you've got to go gloss. There's just nothing else for it. The water has to be glossy because you need whatever you do has to be consistent. So if you decide to paint on a glossy effect on something, then you're stuck on not using a gloss effect on the rest of the piece. Like, it's going to look weird otherwise. So, you know, the big thing is to be consistent. Yes, there is a way to make stuff look wet without putting a gloss on it, but it is more advanced painting techniques usually. Do I have anything? Let me see if I've got a model. Not really. I mean, the short answer is that making things look wet, you have to make them look shiny. So you've got to be able to paint that almost like an NMM effect. Like, you've got to be able to get that shiny look, the spot highlights. You have to, probably you want to study what does wet sand look like. It's darker than the other sand, right? So that means you'd have to paint appropriately. So you actually have to study what your subject looks like in nature so that you can paint the wet effect as it appears, right? Because wet clothes are darker. Wet sand is darker. But then you also have to like be able to paint water to make that effect obvious, right? So, oh, thanks for the tier 1 sub, Super Saiyan Retro Bro. Awesome. Dragon Ball Z. Fantastic. So that's the problem with trying to paint things that are wet. It's actually one of the hardest things to do in miniature painting, is to paint something like it's wet without using that gloss and making the effect carry. I've only seen it done successfully on maybe one miniature, maybe two miniatures, with using kind of a rain water droplet effect. It's really difficult, really difficult. You've got to be a master of observing and painting what you see and getting that shine effect down. So not easy, not easy. You might be able to do that. Wet trails in the sand might work, but then are you going to put little water droplets on the crab, right, Tiamat? Or is he crawling out of the water? Like, if you have water sculpted on the piece, then you could probably do the dark trails in the sand and it would look right. Because you've got a if this then that, right? You're setting up a story on your base. You've got the water's edge, so these dark trails coming out of the water, people are either gonna think that it's mud or that it's wet sand. So it's that sort of thing. Alrighty, next question. Let's go. Would it be better to practice from Valandar? Would it be better to practice one technique until you have it down, then move on to a new technique, or to practice multiple techniques as you go? This is a great question. One second, my throat is drying out. In general, when you are starting out, practicing one technique is going to get you in better stead. Like, and you don't have to practice it for like weeks though. Like, spend a couple days working on your base coating and make sure you're happy with your base coat and how neat it is. You know, like, if you're still pretty messy, just keep working on getting a nice clean base coat. You know, it's not to say don't finish a model, but essentially vary the thing that you're trying hard on every day. So like, when you first start painting, maybe you spend a couple days just trying to paint neatly, right? Because brush control is what you're building. That's key. Being able to hit the areas of the model. You're trying to paint something tiny. You may not ever have done anything like this before. So your fine motor control has to adjust to it, and it's going to take time. So maybe first week, maybe you're just base coating minis, trying to get them down. Then work on your shading. Try to make a perfect wash. Learn how washes act over, say, a really light color versus a medium color. Look at different colored washes. Use different ratios. Try to build a really light wash and a dark wash, you know. But try to work on different things at every time. I got better, and I've told this story numerous times, but I got really good I was painting for eBay at the time. It was my main source of income, so I had to get models out fairly quickly. And so I didn't have the luxury of spending all the time in the world on one model. So what I would do is I would pick a different area of that model to concentrate on every day. So whatever I was painting, I would say, I'm going to paint this face, the best face I can possibly do it. Or I'm going to paint this cloak, the best blending I've ever done. And that way I could micro focus on one thing and actually make progress on something and then paint the rest of it much faster. So there would be like this one part of the miniature that was really good and the rest of the miniature would just be okay. But that's, it does take focus. It does take concentration. And what your mileage is best on is really going to vary by how you learn. Maybe switching every day is something that appeals to you. Whatever keeps you engaged is really half the battle, right? If you're excited about something and about learning something, then you're going to learn it a lot faster. And that's just the thing. Yeah, you're gonna prime this the best you've ever primed. Exactly, Image. Well, yeah, but then you just look at it and say, okay, what went wrong? Like, do troubleshoot yourself, right? That's half of it. You need to learn enough to troubleshoot. And so that's after you break it down. That's the next thing, is learning to self-correct. So it's like, well, why isn't this a good priming job? Well, it beat it up and it wasn't solid, or it got too thick in this area. So if it got too thick, then try thinning it a little bit, right? So there's always an answer to tuning. And if you have to keep a little painting journal where you talk about your journey just for yourself, do it. That'll remind you of things. Let's see. Okay. And also, Valandar, just one more thing. Even today, when I'm trying to become better at a given technique, I will do that, just focus on that technique on one model. I will absolutely do that. Where if I'm trying to do crazy freehand, like on my sacrifice bust, I will focus on crazy freehand. And that is what I am focused on until I like get it to a point that I'm like, okay, I learned something, I did something better than I thought, I'll move on. So it's just, go with what your passion is at the moment is really probably your best thing. But if you notice at any time, like, that you're trying to do, like, okay, I want to focus on a glowing effect, but you didn't really concentrate on, like, getting your techniques, your foundational techniques set up, you're going to probably fail a little bit at your advanced technique. Then it's time to stop and ask, okay, what technique would I be well served to get better at before I try this glowing effect again? That kind of thing. So always learn that. Let's see. Don't know who you guys are talking about. So I'm going to go on. Night SOS, how do I tackle painting horns? Always look at a visual reference. I tend to paint horns because I like the effect. I tend to paint them darker at the roots, but in reality, a lot of them are dark at the roots and then get lighter and then get dark toward the tips. It's painting horns is like, find an example of a horn that you would like to paint. And I always leave texture. Always leave texture on the bone too. I talked about this recently. I don't remember which model it was, but I showed you guys, if you look at your fingernails, you see that your fingernails grow outward with like little striations, little lines on them, right? So think about that. A claw is just an extension of that. That's why you've got those grooves in animal claws, right? And then on a horn, it's not going to be so different. You're going to get that outgrowth also. So think about things like that when you are painting horns. Otherwise, use bone color or ivory colors. And that's what I tend to use. Let's see here. Francis, can you recommend a general glossy photo art book, Intro to Artists and Painters for a Newbie, to explore different styles and color schemes? Whew, that's a hard one. Like, you might want to pick up like art history 2, like even a textbook. And you wouldn't want the initial art history, because most of the time that's ancient art, although I actually find that I get more mileage out of those for design elements. But look at something like the Renaissance painters, and it's almost better to, it probably is better to like look for an art history, like Art Through the Ages or something like that. I don't have a specific book in mind, Francis, because at this point I have very specific ones. I have a whole coffee table book on Michelangelo. I have a whole coffee table book on James Tissot. I've got, the Sistine Chapel, and I've got Van Gogh. As you can see from those three people, I have a very wide range of artists that I admire, right? And I've got Dinotopia from James Gurney. So I've got Impressionists, and I've got Baroque, and I've got Pre-Raphaelites, and I've got, really almost the best thing is maybe to go to the library, check out a book on art through the ages. There's bound to be something like that. Look for styles you like, and then look for a book on that style. So if you look at at James Waterhouse, who's a pre-Raphaelite painter, and you love his takes on fairy tales and folklore, then pick up a book on the pre-Raphaelites, and then you get a whole bunch of awesome stuff. I have a book on pinup art. I have a book on, you name it, and that's when then you kind of gravitate toward different art styles, and then you can start cherry picking books, because it's really rewarding to like get a book on an artist that you really love their style and you love the colors they use, and you have a specific thing you want to get out of that book. Let's see here. Oh, no, I have Dutch friends. I know that it sounds like you're gargling when you're supposed to say gach. But I do actually have a lot of Dutch friends, Jairus, believe it or not. But yeah, I'm going to Americanize it because because American. But I do have a whole book on him, and it has lovely pieces, and I've seen some of his works in person. I also like Seurat from the pointillist era. I keep thinking about doing pointillism on miniatures. Right, yeah. Well, it probably wouldn't, but you know what? There's gotta be books out there that are just like art through the ages, or, art in the 20th century, or art in the 18th and 19th centuries, art in the Renaissance, any of that stuff. And of course, it also, as bringing up the Dutch, there's a lot of beautiful, like, Dutch, there's amazing Dutch artists from back when the Dutch masters were painting back in the 1800s. That's a whole different style. So the world of art is huge. And finding a single book that would take you all the way around it is going to be challenging. But there's got to be stuff, because there's plenty of art history classes out there. So there's going to be a survey of art through the ages somewhere. You may have to like figure it out though, whether you're looking at, like, I've got a book on Chinese art. I've got a book on Moorish architecture. I've got a book on, so you may need to like, it gives you an idea that, my bookshelf out there is all art books, right? If there's a particular geographical area that you've drawn to, I have a book on Egypt. Then you may want to also go there for inspiration. But usually I build a library, or you just Google. Like, you might be able to find a great website for this. Somebody probably has, some art history buff out there probably has a magnificent blog for discovering artists, great artists from past eras. So look for that. That's free. You don't even have to buy a book. And then if you like see art in there that you like, then you know what era maybe you should focus on. Things like that. Whew. Super, guys. All right, we're getting out there. Let me see here. Saltor, how do I know if I thin my paint too much or too little? I just used my MSP paints last night for the first time, and wow, the difference. Well, thank you, Saltor. I'm glad you really liked it. So I did a class for ReaperCon. It is on our Reaper YouTube, and it is called Thinning MSP Paints. And in it, I demo all of pretty much I answer your question, and it's free. We did it on Twitch, so that means it goes up forever. It will be in the Reaper YouTube forever. You will always be able to find it. So if you Google, or if you go to our YouTube and you search for Thinning MSP, that should bring it up. And that's a whole hour long, I think. It was hour and a half long class on how much to thin various colors for MSP, for various effects, and I demonstrate how they look. So that should be like what you, and also if you go to my Patreon, which again at patreon.com/paintingbig, I have a free PDF that I put up on there afterwards summarizing the ratios that I used. So there you go. Woohoo! Yay, free, right? Free PDFs. And yes, get your hashtag free in. We're about to draw our last free thing. Well, that's why I say, Francis, like, look for a blog that's like type art through the ages into Google. See what you get. There's just so much. And if you have something in your head where it's like, oh, well, I want a fanciful art style. I want oils. I want lots of fancy dresses. I want, if you've got something, ask. People can, and then maybe some of your fellow artists can point you toward where you want. Like, if you told me I'm interested in painting realistic fabric, the first person I'd tell you to look at is James Tissot, who himself, like, his mother was a hat maker and his father was in textiles. And so his paintings are like women in fancy dresses and guys in like fancy garb also. They're just fantastic for textile patterns, colors, and transparency. So like things like that, if you get into like, if you think about what you want to learn from looking at different art styles, then that will help you. I think I actually have that up, and Celadon. Like, actually, I think that might be free. I wonder if it is free. I think it is. It might be for patrons only. I did a thing on how I typically go through the process of creating a paint. Well, you can make unique paints at home all the time, man. Celadon. Like I can't tell you how to make a huge batch of a color. I cannot give away the Master Series secrets. I cannot do that for you. But essentially what you do is you start with a base, which is a resin, like acrylic, latex, vinyl, all that acrylic, latex, paint blend stuff, you know. You start with that, you add a bunch of different additives to it to make it behave exactly the way you want to. And then you start adding pigments to it to tune toward a color that you want. It involves a fair bit of knowledge of paint interactions, pigment interactions, and you know, I have like 15 years of experience, so for me it's easy to toss one together. But anybody walking into my job would probably be overwhelmed very quickly. But if you just want to mix an individual color, Reaper sells empty dropper bottles. It's the easiest thing in the world if you create your very own yellow-orange fire highlight and you decide you want a big batch of it to like mix it in a bottle and mix at least like a quarter of a bottle of it. Remember, each of those Reaper empties holds about 400 drops of paint. So you can actually, even if it looks like the bottle's only a third full, you have a lot of paint in there. Let's see. I think that's pretty much what we got as this mixing is fun. Exactly. Super. Yeah, Northern Renaissance was really capturing textures of clothes also. The Dutch masters did amazing NMM, non-metallic metals. They did some of the mirrored teapots and crystal glasses and stuff they did were freaking amazing. Those people had chops. But even like more modern painters like Dali was like some of his stuff. I actually went to the Dali Museum when I was in Florida visiting my godfather recently, and oh my god, like seeing those paintings in person, he blows your mind. And like people like are like, oh, Dali, that surrealist guy, but oh my gosh, he was an amazing painter. That man had major chops. So yeah, just go around, play around, look at some of the different art styles, find something that appeals to you, get ideas for color schemes or textures. It's all fun. Learning is fun. Scandinavian rose mailing, yeah. Yeah, exactly. See, Rax recreated a custom fire glow paint that was discontinued. So you can do that. That's absolutely, it's easy. All right, so Justin, get ready for our last giveaway. Has everybody got their hashtag free?
Everyone get your hashtag free in.
Get your hashtag free. I want to thank everybody, by the way, all of you for showing up today to the AMA. I always have a lot of fun, and you guys asked excellent questions. And I'm gonna save that one, Chris Air, till next time. We gotta have something to start from. But that's a really good question. I promise I will talk about it. Excellent. Hopefully not being still stuck at home in social distancing. How about that? Oh dear. Yes, thank you all so much for coming in. It's been a blast. I had a super fun time. This is a great start to my Friday. Also, I guess I mentioned the Patreon, but I also have my own Twitch channel, twitch.tv/paintingbig. On Wednesdays, I do just, paint anything I'm working on and answer questions. And then on Tuesday and Thursday, we actually do a D&D. We're creating a D&D world together. So that's twitch.tv/paintingbig, if you're interested. A lot of you kind of saw what we were doing yesterday before Reaper Live came on, so we have a lot of fun. Thank you.
Ms. Ann, I have our winner.
Awesome. Who is it? Tell us.
It is Warshadow55.
Warshadow! Congratulations! Round of applause. Tiddly, thank you. I really appreciate that you are inspired. I try to inspire. I seek to inspire. It's what I do. I love the world building is really fun. I'm glad you think so. I may be one. I have a lot of fun with it too. I have to get some writing on our world anvil done. Yes. Awesome. Congratulations on your Dagon and Dagon altar. Now you too can worship at the little Lovecraftian altar. Okay, guys. Well, geez, we ended on time. It was perfect. We got through all the questions, which is fantastic. Yeah, I kind of feel like I just ran through the Reaper Master Series Awards ceremony at ReaperCon. Talking nonstop, super fast for an hour and a half. I didn't get to hear the rounds of applause, though. Yes, and we have lots of programming on Fridays. What are we doing today, Reaper John or Reaper Justin? What do we have today?
Today we have Reaperland at 3 p.m. Central, and then we have, following that, we have the Bones 5 Live update with Ron.
Oh, Bones 5 Live. Awesome. And you get to talk to Dave and John at Reaperland. So fantastic. Yeah, I'm glad you liked it, War Shadow. Cool. Yeah, well, the only I mean, thank you to everybody who asked great questions, really, right? Because I can't do a great AMA without great questions, and you guys asked some really good questions this time. So keep them coming. We're probably about what do you think, Justin? About 15, 20 subs toward our next giveaway?
That sounds about right. Yeah, I'll do
Yeah,
some quick tallying for the
yeah.
next show, but
We
yeah.
our goal is 100 over the course of like maybe the next month. We doing an AMA once a month is about right. So we aim for 100 so that we can give out bigger models. That's essentially. We used to aim for a lower number, but then we couldn't give out big stuff. So yeah, so excellent. And are there still ghoulie bags left in our ass? That's a very important question. Are there, Justin?
I do not know.
Oh no. Well, that's a good one to ask Reaperland then. Maybe they can run out and find out. Ghoulie bags are
Oh, it says
gone.
ghoulie bags are gone.
Oh no! We have to go buy our own candy, guys.
I would say by 10/23 usually they're gone by this point every year, I think,
Yeah.
like the third week or so.
I'm glad I got one. I got tasty things in mine. I got a giant Tootsie Roll, so they remembered what I love. Alrighty. Excellent. Oh, the UK still has some, so Europeans are lucky. All right, guys, I'm gonna call it there. I gotta take my old dog out for her morning walk, and I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. And hopefully, I'll see you Monday morning, when we may be painting the Sphinx, or maybe we'll be working on somebody else. I don't know. It's a surprise. So I will see you, and enjoy the rest of the Reaper programming today, guys. Okay, have a great one.
Thank you guys very much. We're going to be rating Jimmy the Brush. We'll see you guys at 3 p.m. Check out Reaperland. I think we're going to play some more Stream Animal because I really enjoyed that game last time. So it was a lot of fun. It was very interactive with more people. So it was great. So we'll see you guys at 3 p.m. today.